Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In chapter 7.2, we will discuss arrays of a class objects. We will assume that we have the following class. We have a class named student, and the private members we have are ID and GBA. And then we have a constructor that will initialize ID to 2017, GBA to 0.0. We have a set method, setStudent, that will accept as parameter a new ID and a new GBA. A new ID will be set in ID, and a new GBA will be validated if it is within the correct range. If it is not between 0 and 4, we will display a message invalid. Otherwise, if it is a valid, we will save it in GBA. GetID is a get method that will return the ID. GetGBA is another get method that will return GBA. Finally, print will do the output of ID and GBA. So we have this method that is saved in student.java, and then we have to write another main method. Assume we have another file student array, and within the main method we have the following statements. We have to create an array of type student of size 3 as follow. So I should have my array name list. I should have 3 locations, and each one should represent a student of the previous slide we had. So for each student we should have ID and GBA. So the way to create this array, I have to say student. This is the name of the class. This is the class we just discussed, which is this one, student. And then brackets list. This is the name of the array equal new. Again, the name of the class student between bracket 3, and this is the size. So you will have an array of size 3. The first index is 0, and each element will have the private members ID and GBA, and also you'll be able to access the public method set, get, and print. Now the second statement, it says list at location 0 equal new student, which means for the array list at a specific location, location 0, create this object. It will call the constructor, and it will initialize it to the default values, which are 2017 and 0.0. Now if you need to do the printing, basically you will have to say list at location 0.print. So again, we'll have to go to the array list at a specific location .print. It will do the output of the values, and this will do the output of the values that you have in location 0 with the ID and GBA. So you will have the ID as 2017 and then the GBA as 0.0. Now let's assume we have a new program that we will start with a scanner, and then we will create our array just like what we did. So we will have to say student bracket list equal new student bracket 3, which means we are creating an array. We have 3 elements, and each of them is of type student, so each of them will have ID and GBA. Now our second step is we will ask the user to enter the details of each student. We have to save it in the array. Because we are dealing with array, so always we need a loop, and that's why we have a loop from I equals 0, I less than list.length, and I plus plus. Our first statement will be we have to create the object. That's why, just like what we did in the previous slide, and we said list of 0 equal a new slide, here a new student. Here for each object we have to create the object, so we'll have to say list of I equal a new student. It means all of the objects will be created and they will be initialized to their default value. Now we have to say enter ID and GBA. We will read the ID, we will read the GBA, save them in 2 variables, and then we need to save them in the array. So at the first time when we have the location of I as 0, so location of I is pointing to the first location, the first thing is create the object. So this object will be created at this location. Enter ID and GBA, so we will output a message for the user, enter ID and GBA. Read values from the user ID and GBA, so the user will enter 2 values and we will save them in variables. So the ID will be as 123 and the GBA will be 1.4. Now we have to take these values and we have to save them in location 0. And as you know from chapter 6, in order to set the values of objects, always we use the set method. That's why we mention here set student, and we will send the two values, the ID which is 123 and the GPA which is 1.4. And we need to set it for the array at location I, which is right now it's array at location 0. So go to array at location 0, your ID will be 123 and the GPA will be 1.4. Once you are done with location 0, you will go and move your location to the second index and you will process the same thing. So now because we are in the for loop, you have to go to the second I. I will have the value 1. The first thing, create the array, the object. So the object at location 1 will be created. Ask the user for values and read the values. So we will ask for values and we will read these two values. We save them in ID and GPA. Now the ID which is a 333 and the GPA which is 2.5, I need to take them and I need to save them in location 1 of the array. And that's why we say go to the array at location 1 dot set student, the current ID you have and the current GPA which are 333 and 2.5. So that's why we have 333, 2.5 in location 1. Similarly, you will go to I equal 2 and you will read the other values 112, 1.5 and you will save them in your array. So when dealing with arrays of objects, always remember the first step is to create your array. So you have to mention the class name, the name of the array, again a new class name and the size of your array. Then you will need to ask the user for values. So you need a loop because you are dealing with array. So always, just like what we did in chapter 7.1, how to deal with arrays, always I need a for loop and my loop will start from 0 up to length. And then we need to create the objects. This is the difference between arrays of classes and arrays of normal integer and double values. So here the first difference is you need to go to array at location I and create the object. So this is an important thing you have to remember when it comes to creating and dealing with arrays of objects. And then you will just work normally by asking the user for values and reading the values. Just remember to set the values. You cannot access the array directly, and that's why you have to mention go to the array at location I and you have to use the set method in order to save the values. Now let's assume our next job is to output student IDs with GPA below 2. So assume we did the following. We have the array, we did the reading of the values. Now my array is having 3 students. We need to go for each student and we need to check if this student is having a GPA below 2. If this is the case, we need to output student ID. So we have to go to location 1 and we have to check the GPA. This is 1.4 below 2. So we have to output the ID, and that's here we have 123 as the first output. Then we have to go to location 1 and we need to compare GPA. If it is below 2, it's not. So we will not do any output in location 1. We have to move to location 2. The GPA is 1.5, so yes, this is below 2. I have to do the output of the ID, and that's why we have here 112. So because it's an array, it means that we have to have a loop starting from the beginning till the end of the array. And that's why we have here I0, I should be less than list dot length. So initially, I will be at location 0. Now, as we mentioned, we need to get the ID and we need to compare it, and then if it is below 2 we have to do the output of the ID. And because we are dealing with ID and GPA as a private members, it means I have to use the get method in order to retrieve the ID and the GPA. That's why we have the following statement. It says go to list at location I, get the ID, save it in ID variable. So go to the array at location I, which is 0, and get the ID, which is 123, and save it in the variable ID. So I'll have here as 123. Similarly, go to the array at the current index, retrieve the GBA and save it in a variable GBA. So we'll retrieve this value of the current index and we will save it over there. Now we can have our if condition. Our if condition, we can mention just GBA is below 2. This GBA, which is 1.4, which is the GBA at location 0, if it is below 2, do the output of the ID, and that's why we will have the first output as 1, 2, 3. Now we have to go to the second location. So now we will have to move with I to the second location, which means I will have the value 1. Similarly, get the ID, get the GBA, save them in the 2 variable, which means 333 will be saved in the ID and 2.5 will be saved in the GBA. Compare the GBA. If it is below 2, the GBA is 2.5, which means it's not below 2. So we will not output the ID and we will go to the other I. So we will go and move the index to the last location we have, which is location 2. Now just do the same thing. We will get the ID, we will get the GBA. So these ID and GBA will be just saved there. Is the GBA below 2? Yes. So we have to output the ID, and that's why we will output 112. So here the practice as we have an array of classes and we need to go through the elements and we need to check one private member if it is below 2. In order to check if this private member is having a value below 2, we cannot access the element directly, and that's why we need to get the value and save it in a variable, and then we need to do the comparison. If it is valid, we will do the output of the ID. Similarly, this if condition, we can just write it as follow. We can say, let's have an if condition. Let's go at list of I dot get GBA if it is below 2. So instead of having list of get of ID dot get ID and save it in a variable, we can just remove this statement and replace it with direct if. And similarly, instead of saving the GBA and the ID in variables, we can just mention I should have system.out.println, and I will mention list of I dot get ID. So here I'm mentioning that at the same time you have your if condition, go to the current index, get the GBA. If it is below 2, then go to the current index and retrieve the ID and then do the output of the ID. So what we have here, so we have here 2 files. The first file is a class student where we have the private members and we have all the public methods including constructor. Then we wrote another Java file, student array, where we have our main method and we created the array, and then we have a for loop to read the data of the elements of our array, and then we have another for loop to search for students with GPA below 2. So we have actually the following. We have the first part of our main method as creating the array and reading the data of the array. The second part of the main method is we have a loop to search for students with the GPA below 2. So we can redesign our main method as follow. We will just have the same thing. We will create the array and then we will do the reading of the student data. And instead of searching for elements below 2 within the same method, we will write another method. We will call it search. It will accept an array of students and we will have the same code. We have a for loop. Just take the values. If it is below 2, then you do the output. So this a small method. It will accept array as a parameter. It will do the search for students with GPA below 2 and then it will output the ID. Now from the main method, just we need to add a calling of the method, search, and between a bracket, we just mention the name of the array. So the first part, we are reading the values of the array, and then we will call the method. So we will come over there, and the name of the array, it means this is the same name of the array, which means this array will be used in the main and in the search method. We will just execute all the statements in the method. We will output the ID of students with GPA below 2, and then we will go back to the main method. So these two versions are equivalent. Just simply you can have the reading of the data and then the calculation or the any search you have to do within the same method, or you can do it in this way where you have the search in a separate method. So you have to give it a name and you mention that student bracket list, this is the parameter you have to accept, and then you will do the execution as normal. From the main method, just remember you need to call your method. So it will do the reading, it will call the method, and then it will go back to your main method. And as an exercise, let's go over the following. It says here, assume you have the following class, public class workout, and we have the following private member. We have name, set, repetitions, time, and then we have a constructor, a set method, get name, get set, get repetition, and get time. The question says, assume that the array is of type workout named list is created and populated with data in the main method. Write a static method named effort. Find efforts that take as parameter an array list. The method should output the names of high intensity workout. A workout is classified of high intensity if the effort is greater than 2000. And the formula to calculate the effort is effort equals sets by repetition by time. So assume that you have the following class, and also assume in the main method the array is created and it was populated with data, which means already we ask the user for values and the values were entered by the user. Then what do we have to do? We have to write a method. It will do a search in the array, and we have to find only those with a high effort, which means the calculation of sets multiplied by repetition multiplied by time is greater than 2000. So our main task is only to write a small method, not the whole main method, only a small method to find high intensity workout. So we have it as usual. This is the prototype of the method. We have public static void, find effort, this is the name of the method. Workout bracket list, this says it means my array is called list. So I will have list, and each index will have name, set, repetition, and time. And the data is there because we will assume that the main method already done, the array already created, and the data already saved in my array. Now the second job is we have to have a for loop from the beginning till the end of the array. Here we don't care if the array is of size 10 or of size 100. All what we know that this is an array, so simply we can say I equals 0, I is less than length. Then the main thing is we have to go for each element, so that's why I is starting from 0. It means we are currently looking only at this object. What do we need to do? We need to calculate sets multiplied by repetition multiplied by the time. So the way to multiply these, just like as we agreed, because they are private members, it means we need to use the get method. So we will mention list of I, so currently list of 0 dot get set multiply by list of I dot get repetition by list of I dot get time. So it will be 3 multiplied by 10 multiplied by 300. I will save it in a variable calorie, and then I will say if calorie is greater than 2000, as according to the question you have to output the name. So in order to retrieve the name, simply you will just have to say list bracket I get name, and this will do the output of the name. And then you will go to the second index, so you are done with location 0, you will go to location 1, and you will repeat the same process. Go to the current location and then get the sets, get repetition, get time. So you multiply 4 by 5 by 20, and you will get here a number which is not greater than 2000. So you will not output the name, but you will go to the other index, and similarly you will continue with your other elements in your array. So again, the idea here is I need to assume that the main method is already there, already the array is created, and already we ask the user for values. Now my main job is, if I have this array, I need to go for each element, which means I need a for loop, and the loop will start from 0 till the end. Then I need to go inside each element and I need to calculate the multiplication of sets multiplied by repetition multiplied by time. Remember, these are private members, so always we need to use the get method, and this is why I have to use get set, get repetition, get time. Just do the multiplication, and according to the condition, if it is greater than 2000, you have to display the name. Displaying the name there, it means, again, because this is a private member, I have to use a get name. We have here another exercise that says, assume you have the following. The class that is given as public class item, we have type and we have a price. Type is a string and a price double. Both of them are private members. We do have the constructor, a set method, get type and get a price. Now it says here, write a static method named countMobile. So this is the name of the method. It will take as parameter an array of type item. That's why here it's mentioned item bracket list. So we have an array and it will have many items in the array. Each of them will have type and a price because these are the private members. The method should count and display the number of items of type mobile. We have to go through all the elements in our array. If that type is equal to mobile, then we have to do the counting. So for example here, if I have, this is my array, and I have only this is as a mobile, it means I will output the count as number 1 because we have only one item of type mobile. Also, we need to assume that this array is also created in a main method and populated with data. So we will not create or ask user for data. We will directly use the array and we will do the search. So the idea here is I need to have a count equals 0 because I need to do the counting of mobile item, and here we started integer count equals 0. And then we have to go through the elements in our array. So we started with I equals 0, so we have I0, I up to list dot length. Now we have to take this value, which means I have to use get, and this is why we say here list of I dot get type. Now when you get the type, you have to compare if it is a mobile or not. So basically, instead of using double equal mobile, because this is a string, it means we have to replace the double equal with equals ignore case. So if this item you are looking for, which is the data you retrieve, equal mobile, then we have to increment count, which is in our case, count will be incremented and it will be 1. We will go to the second I, so now I will be moved to location 1. The same thing, you need to go to list at location I, get the type. List at location I currently is 1. Get me the type, which is XYZ. So we will say XYZ, is it equals to mobile? It's not. So we will not increment the count, and count will still as 1. And then you go back and you finish your elements in your array. Once you finish the elements in your array, the last thing you have to do in your method is you have to output the number of mobile items. That's why we need system.out.println number of mobile items equal count. So if we assume only we have 1 here, it means the output here will be as 1. So again, in this exercise, the main thing is you have to be careful that you are using an array of objects. So always you will need a loop because it's an array. And always you have to say list at location I because this is an array and you have to go to an array of a specific index. If you need to get the mobile, you need to get the price. The only way is by using a get method. So here we have to say get type. And then just as the method was saying, we have to do counting. So just have to say count plus plus. If the question was change a little bit such that you have to display the price of mobile items. Then simply here, instead of saying count plus plus, we have to say system.out.println, and we will say list of I.get price, and this will display the price of mobile items.